Hey guys, it's Mr. Penguinpanda, and this time I'm going to show you the most profitable ways to make money every season in Stardew Valley 1.5. I'll focus on crops, ways to process them, and the new fertilizers. I will compare many different crops and fertilizer combinations, including good breakpoints for how many kegs or preserve jars you need to have. Towards the end, I will also talk about other good ways to make money. I also made an interactive spreadsheet where you can choose from many options to look for the most profitable combinations of fertilizers, crops and machines, and I also included a leftover finder so you can find the best crops to fit into remaining days. By using that spreadsheet, I figured out most of the things I will say, so make sure to check it out. The link is in the description down below, and also if you want to see more content like this, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. First of all, I have to preface this by saying that when talking about crops and machines, I'm going to talk about profit per crop, or rather profit per tile. And what I mean by that is that I assume that we are not limited by how many seeds we can buy, but that we're instead limited by the space we can use. I think it's easy to see that something like wheat actually gives you more gold back for what you've spent, while also growing more quickly. With just 800 starting gold, you could buy 2 starfruit seeds and they would become 1500 gold in 13 days. But with wheat, you could buy 80 seeds to get 2000 gold in 4 days. And this gets even crazier because with the 2000 gold you made, you could plant 200 more seeds and so on until you get 200,000 gold in just a single season of summer, if you could somehow manage to plant 8000 seeds. It's like reinvesting dividends in the stock market, but way better. So in theory, wheats are far better than starfruits, eggplants rule, and parsnips and coffee beans could make you millions if you had all the space in the world. But of course we are limited by space, time and energy, and it would also be incredibly boring. But I do think that this is a super important factor that you have to consider in your first year, where you start out with only 15 parsnip seeds and can easily expand your farmland without worrying about space. But with so many factors like additional gold from fishing and mining, no one give you a definite answer in this scenario. So if you really want to maximize your profits in the very first 2 seasons, the only answer is just trial and error. So that's why I'm going to talk about profit per tile instead. So what did I factor in when deciding the most profitable crops? Unsurpassable Z already made a video about the fertilizers, where to get them and how he calculated profits, so check it out after my video if you want to. I'm going to do it very similarly, but I'm also going to look at the greenhouse, kegs, preserve jars, the seed maker, and I'm going to add some other important stuff as well. So the first thing is item quality. Changes the price of items and is affected by fertilizers and your farming level the moment you harvest items. Right now you can get up to farming level 14 with Farmer's Lunch and the new key seasoning item. It barely changes any results though, so I'm going to stick with farming level 10 the whole time. When you use fertilizers, they will work for any subsequent growth from regrowable crops too, but they will not affect additional items you get from crops like blueberries, coffee beans and potatoes, which will always be of regular quality. The new deluxe fertilizer additionally removes any chance for regular quality crops while also making iridium quality harvests possible. I also accounted for the fact that if you were to use the seed maker or machines, you would only use the lowest quality ones first, which does increase the profit if you don't process everything, or if you can't buy seeds like with sweet gem berries. What I didn't factor in is retaining soil, which doesn't affect the profit per tile, but the new deluxe retaining soil keeps your crops watered forever, and this can actually increase your total profit. If you always process 100% of a regrowing plant in the greenhouse like the ancient fruit, since neither the quality nor the regrowth speed will be affected anyway, you can save up on a few sprinkle tiles. What is important to know is that when fertilizers and speed-gro are applied to the soil, they will stay there forever as long as something is growing. So inside the greenhouse they will basically stay forever, and outside of the greenhouse you can plant crops that grow in both seasons like coffee beans or wheat to carry over any fertilizer to minimize your costs. You can now even use the new fiber seeds from Linus special orders quest for every single season including winter to keep your soil fertilized. You can then also bump away the plants you have grown instead of hacking at them with the pickaxe if you only use them to keep the fertilizers on the ground, and this will actually keep the ground fertilized. For professions, I assume that you have the tiller profession as well as the artisan profession. I will also mention the agriculturist profession a lot of the time. Of course, artisan is better, but it's possible to change to agriculturist when planting and changing back to artisan before selling, since the growth reduction is applied when planting. This does cost 10,000 gold each time, but optimally you can just swap to artisan before selling your goods at the end of the month or year, depending on when you need the money back. Unlike crop tiles, I assume that you're not necessarily limited by the amount of machines you can have. I think this is realistic, since at a certain point you will have filled your farm with all the crops and sprinklers you need, including the maximum 120 in the greenhouse. Even if you fill up every single tile of your farm, the greenhouse and Ginger Island with crops, you will reach a limit eventually compared to kegs or preserve jars that can really be placed anywhere. But I will say if it seems unrealistic and how many machines you will need. Now let's get into the actual best crops and what I figured out. The reality is that I put in a lot of work but figured out that in the end not much has changed with the 1.5 update. The new fertilizers can actually give you increased profit, but it's questionable whether they're really worth it since you can only get them so late in the game. So let's start out with the greenhouse and Ginger Island. When we look at the greenhouse and Ginger Island, the only thing that matters is the pure profit per day, since season changes won't cut into the profit you make, so I don't have to look at how many harvests can fit into 28 days. For regrowable crops, I also ignore their initial growth time and fertilizer costs, since this will be negligible after a while. But for hyperspeed grow, the initial cost to fertilize all greenhouse tiles is still pretty high. So the number one spot is still hops that you turn into pale ale by a large margin. Hops regrow every single day, so with enough kegs you can turn every hops into pale ale for 420 gold per day. They are trellis crops though, so you can't fill up every single tile with them, but you can still use the remaining tiles and fill them up with other crops. The downside is that you need around 50% more machines than you have hops crops, but this would have really awkward timings, so doubling that amount is more realistic. One of the things that did change is that starfruits with both agriculturist and hyperspeed grow have become much better than ancient fruits. With the agriculturist profession, you can harvest them every 7 days. And even with the cost of buying seeds, they beat out ancient fruit wine. Without agriculturist, it's basically the same as using deluxe speed grow with agriculturist, which existed before 1.5. Ancient fruit wine stays the same as always with 330 gold per day, and in this case you can also increase your profits very slightly by using deluxe retaining soil if you never intend to sell the fruits themselves. Notable mentions, beside other starfruit combinations, go to pineapples and melons. If you want to use preserve jars, then blueberries, amaranth and red cabbage are pretty interesting options. But all these options still pale in comparison to pale ale. If we assume that you only want one shed of kegs which can fit 137 machines versus the around 116 to 120 greenhouse tiles, then hops drops down to the level of ancient fruits, since you can only process around 80% of your hops and have to sell the rest. With deluxe or any other fertilizer, you could increase the price of the remaining hops very slightly. Otherwise, the ranking mostly stays the same. And with even fewer machines, ancient fruits, especially with deluxe fertilizer, just become better and better. If you don't want to use any machines at all, then sweet gem berries with the new hyperspeed grow and agriculturist will give you around 160 gold per day. That's assuming you put half of your harvest into the seed maker every time, accounting for quality. Without the profession, they are not really worth it compared to just pure ancient fruits with the deluxe fertilizer. After that, there's a significant gap in profits until you have other stuff like starfruits, pineapples, strawberries and blueberries, which are actually better than cranberries. So what about outside the greenhouse? Outside of the greenhouse, there's no combination in the game that comes even close to beating ancient fruits. With the help of my spreadsheet and my leftover finder, I tried my best to find a combination of fertilizers and crops that could beat ancient fruits with or without machines. And it was hopeless, even with carrying over fertilizers to save some costs every single season. I even included the high costs of the ancient fruit seeds. Practically every ancient fruit seed will cost a little bit more than half a wine, so around 1180 gold for each seed, since you need to put in around 51% of a fruit and therefore half a wine. You can harvest the crop 10 times with Deluxe Speed-gro and Agriculturist, or with just Hyper Speed-gro. Having both Hyper Speed-gro and Agriculturist together don't give you an additional harvest, so this is one of the few times where changing a profession forth and back for 20,000 gold might be really worth it to save up on the insane cost of Hyper Speed-gro. They cost around 1,000 for each crop, not to mention that you might not even have access to Hyper Speed-gro or so much radioactive ore. So with the gold from 10 ancient fruit wines, the before mentioned seed maker cost, and the fertilizer cost, you can make almost 22,000 gold over 3 seasons with a single plant. Another super strong benefit of ancient fruits is the fact that you can even use parts of spring to keep processing wine if you don't have as many kegs as you need. For other crops, even if you carry over the Hyper Speed-gro from spring to fall and use Agriculturist, you can only make up to 15,800 gold. But you do have to turn everything into wine or juice except for the sweet gemberry. You can do this in the way shown on screen if you want to try this out. Without Agriculturist, this will drop down to 14,400 gold per crop tile. Compare that to just carrying over Deluxe Speed-gro and you actually make almost the same amount of money. With Agriculturist, it's basically just like Hyper Speed-gro without it, so you simply make 900 more gold thanks to the fertilizer costs. If you don't take the profession, then you make around 20 less gold compared to Hyper Speed-gro. So yes, Hyper Speed-gro outside the greenhouse or Ginger Island is barely worth it. Only combined with Agriculturist, it can give you a lot of value thanks to the additional sweet gemberry harvest. You can of course carry it over for several years, and if we ignore the fertilizer cost, then that's 1,400 additional profit over 3 seasons for each crop. But only if you process absolutely everything in kegs, carry it over every season, and take the Agriculturist profession. And this is only possible in the super late game when you have many better options anyway. Of course, you might not have enough machines to process everything in the greenhouse and outside as well. So with the Hyper Speed-gro, without machines, you can earn almost 6,300 gold with Agriculturist, and most of that comes from the additional sweet gemberry. Deluxe Fertilizer gives you only slightly more with the lack of the second sweet gemberry. If you instead switch between both, then you can make around 200 more gold per crop. If you leave out the profession, Hyper Speed-gro becomes really bad without the second sweet gemberry, and now Deluxe Fertilizer really seems to become worth it, and it would be even better if you didn't use the seed maker, but instead bought the seeds from the traveling merchant. But at the same time, without machines, you can just use the Deluxe Fertilizer Ancient Fruits for around 8,300 gold over 3 seasons with Agriculturist and 7,300 without Agriculturist. And this will take so much less work. So what about other general good profit crops outside of ancient fruits if you don't want to change professions around? Also, maybe you only have a certain amount of machines because you use most for the greenhouse crops. Well, you can just look up what's best with your settings in my spreadsheet, but I'll also give you a few options for every single season. A well-known strategy in spring is to use speed-gro with strawberries, allowing you to get 6 harvests instead of 5 harvests if you bought the seeds the year before or by using the seed maker. If you have to wait until the Egg Festival, then you can just plant and harvest potatoes or kale 3 times with Deluxe Speed-gro followed by strawberries. Otherwise, coffee beans are also extremely good for the whole season. If you have very few kegs, around 3 for every 100 crops, then coffee beans can give you up to 1,250 gold over the whole spring season. If you have around 25% kegs compared to crops, then Deluxe Speed-gro rhubarb actually becomes better than strawberries since you can't process them all until you have 10% more machines than crops. With preserve jars you can reach that point far earlier, but we will lose out on some profits. Potatoes also become a viable option, but preserve jars are overall worse in spring. In summer, the clear winner is the starfruit with Deluxe Speed-gro for 3 harvests. Alternatively, Deluxe Speed-gro red cabbage allows you to get 1 harvest of wheat as well. And of course, another well-known strategy are Speed-gro blueberries, giving you 1 extra harvest. If you do have some machines, then starfruits will win, followed by Deluxe Speed-gro hops, which only overtake them very slightly if you can process absolutely everything. The alternatives in red cabbage and melons have far lower profits. Using preserves can be good with blueberries, but this does take a lot of them, and even then starfruits are still way better. In fall, any variant of sweet gem berries, even with the cost of putting them into the seed maker, is the best by a large margin. And without access to hyper speed-gro, deluxe speed-gro becomes the best since it allows you to fit in one harvest of pumpkins. Otherwise, those same pumpkins are the second best crop, followed by basic fertilizer cranberries. This is mostly because 4 sap is a pretty cheap price. If you don't craft them, then just don't use any fertilizer. With kegs, deluxe speed-gro pumpkins are the way to go and can overtake the sweet gem berries with very few kegs. If you have around 2 times more kegs than crops, then cranberries can become the most profitable fall crop, which seems pretty unlikely though. Fall is actually the best season for preserve jars since you need so few of them compared to kegs, while also barely losing any profit thanks to pumpkins being a vegetable. So that's pretty good. So what are additional profitable things to do in 1.5, especially if you don't want to just skip days ahead? Just like before, you can farm iridium ore and now also radioactive ore to craft into bars. You can sell them for a really good profit with the blacksmith profession for 1,500 and 4,500 gold respectively. This is a really good way to make money while waiting for your machines to do their work. If you can also acquire key gems during that time and don't need to buy anything with them anymore, you can instead trade them for hoppers. If you put those hoppers into the new deconstructor, they give you radioactive bars which you can sell once again. Another good additional source of income are bee houses. I made a video where I filled up Ginger Island with bee houses, so check that out if you haven't done so yet. Usually they give you barely any profit because flowers have to grow at the start of every season, but with Ginger Island you can now have fairy roses stay all year long. This is still less profitable than the vines and you usually have kegs and everything else already set up, but on the western side of the island you can actually plant crops with ginger grows, so this is the best use of those spots. And overall every bee house will give you around 230 gold a day. Besides the previously mentioned options, pigs are probably the most profitable thing in Stardew Valley if it once again wasn't for the limited space you have, the work you have to put into it, and especially if the initial investment wasn't so high. With the botanist and gatherer profession as well as a high enough friendship, you can easily get 3 or more iridium quality truffles every single day. And they sell for 1,250 gold each, and that's just with a single pig. So you can easily get up to 4,000 gold from just one pig every single day. With the new auto petter item you can even freeze the friendship so you don't have to pet them anymore after a while. But this takes a lot of work to set up at first. So that's about it. I put in a lot of work into this and didn't figure out much exciting, which was kinda depressing, so I hope it was still helpful in any way. If you have any questions about how to use my spreadsheet or anything else, then just ask in the comments down below, and I would appreciate if you give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. Other than that, have a nice day and see you in my next video.